Good morning, everyone. This is Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. I just want to talk for a few minutes here about the presidency, about Congress, and our overall government, the way it's situated. Now, this last week, our president in the Supreme Court got knocked down his powers on tariffs, on a specific kind of tariff, on tariffs that he instituted through an emergency law, and the Supreme Court said that he couldn't do it. And a lot of people think he can't have tariffs then. You can't have can't have a tariff using the emergency powers. There are a couple of other places in which he still has the authority to use tariffs. In fact, out of all the tariffs he issued, 30% of the tariffs were not affected by this ruling. Now, when you go back and look at the convention, and from the time they first gathered in May continually till July 4th, when they had the grand compromise, all that time was spent discussing the rights and privileges of the legislature. They were arguing over whether to have one legislative branch, two legislative branches, which branch would have more power, how they would be elected. Would it be the same? And in the end, it was a Senate by state and House by population. But then they also had to go through and discuss the courts and the presidency, and some cleanup issues like how to enact the Constitution once they were finished with it. And how to adopt it later, how to add into it. So there were a lot of different things going on. The presidency, though, was never meant to be as strong as it is today. See, when we get back to this tariff issue, the reason the president has some tariff authority is because the legislature, through acts of Congress, through law, has given him that authority. They've also given him all kinds of authority. They've set up entire branches of the government, entire sectors like Department of Commerce, Labor, Education. Just the list goes on and all the different things that the legislature has passed law to give power to the president. And that's why we have such a strong presidency today. When Andrew Jackson was elected president, he went through some major steps, and a lot of people thought he really went overboard. Grant is ridiculed for abuse of power. Lincoln was thinking about getting rid of, or actually arresting justices. You had Woodrow Wilson seizing power, Roosevelt seizing power. The list goes on and on and on. And as one president or the other took this or that, he became more powerful. And if the legislature doesn't come after the president in court, then those powers remain with the president. And that's kind of where we are today. We have a much stronger president than what we used to have. Now, if we don't want tariffs instituted by the president, then the Congress has to pull back on some of these rights they've just delegated to the executive branch. And that's really where we are today. The legislature does have the power. And when you look at taxes have to be instituted from the Article 1, which is your legislature, that's all true. But Congress has already authorized so much of that. And that's where we get to today. Now, personally, I wish Congress would pull back some of that and deal with it, because Where we are really represented is in the House. That's where our true representation is. That's where it was meant to be. That's the way it was designed. The president was supposed to be a nonsensical position. Congress, the Senate would pass laws, the president would sign on to it if he felt that it was necessary. But he was not all powerful. Congress had the right to declare war. The president has the right to act as commander-in-chief. Even the Supreme Court didn't have the right to overturn anything initially until that right was seized by the court in Marbury versus Madison. One of our earliest Supreme Court decisions was right about the time Jefferson got into office. So all these things do matter in the course of how strong do we want an executive to be. Now, obviously, the way things are situated today, with two parties fighting each other and neither one of them willing to cross over and help the other, we have kind of a problem where a Congress can't do much of anything. Not with an overwhelming majority. And that becomes an issue of how do we get something passed? How do we accomplish our goals? If you've neutered the president to the point that he can't do anything, we have to find a way to make our elected representatives work across party lines with each other. Now, if you look back past, I don't know, the last 20 or 30 years, every so often we have government shutdowns. The government's shutting down. Why? Because Congress can't agree on how to spend money. Their main goal, Congress's main goal, is to write a budget. And if a budget is not passed, then they're forced to try to pass a continuing resolution. And a continuing resolution means you're continuing on the last year's budget. That's what it is. So they relegated any duty to themselves and given more and more power to the president. That's really what's happened here. I'd be happy to pull some of it back. I think it would be fair to do so. But this Supreme Court decision brings up the point of how powerful the presidency really is, because Congress has given immense power to the executive branch. Because if he has to make the decision, they don't get the blame for it. Think about that, folks. The president makes the decision, Congress doesn't get the blame. In fact, the presidency was so strong that after FDR, that's why they term limited it. It's the only federal office that has term limits. So we've actually increased the power of the presidency over the last 240 years. Think about that, folks. And any decision the Supreme Court makes, we can always overrun that decision too. It's not earth-shattering. We'll go on as a republic. We'll work together. E pluribus union. Out of many is one. Think about that, folks. And subscribe to me if you aren't. And follow me, please. And because it helps me explain to other people how things actually function and work. And what we're doing here is trying to better explain our Constitution and how our governments work, how it's supposed to work. And that's an important thing. I do have a book coming out, probably early July, Liberty. And my friends, liberty is important. The right right to govern ourselves is an important function, but we can't clog it up for partisan reasons and expect to move forward as a country. Think about that for a few minutes. Think about what the presidency is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a fairly weak office. In fact, the State of the Union that we have, I believe this next week, is a report to Congress. Now, why would the president be reporting to Congress? Because our founders believed that the Congress was where the real power was supposed to be. Thank you for your time today. We'll catch you next time on the next Constitutional Talks. Bye for now, folks. Have a good week.